Welcome to the DevelopmentAid online webinar session. We are excited to have you join us. We strongly encourage active participation in our discussions, and all participants who stay until the end of the event will receive a certificate of attendance via email 24 hours after the webinar. To ensure that everyone can participate, all cameras and microphones are automatically muted. You can submit your questions or comments via the questions section on the screen, or participate in the polls during the event to let us know your opinion. We look forward to an engaging and insightful discussion. Enjoy.
Well, hello everyone. On behalf of DevelopmentAid, I welcome you to today's webinar titled Towards Strategy 2030, Nordic Development Fund on the Frontier of Catalytic Climate and Development Finance. My name is Jon and I'll be moderating this event. Let me know if you have any issues hearing or seeing us well. So as always, we have several polls planned for today's webinar, so don't hesitate to participate as your opinion matters to us. Before we move to the introductions, I would like to start our first poll to get a better understanding from which part of the world you are joining us from. So the first poll should be visible on your screen shortly. The Nordic Development Fund is the joint Nordic international finance institution established by intergovernmental treaty between Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, and Sweden back in 1988. The NDF is focused on advancing Nordic leadership in addressing climate change and development challenges in lower income countries by using flexible, concessional, and risk-tolerant financing for climate solutions. In 2025, for example, the NDF approved around 68 million euros in new financing, out of which around 35 million was allocated as grants and another 33 million was allocated as equity investment supporting 9 new projects. So at the beginning of this year, the fund had officially launched its strategy 2030. This launch marked the start of its new strategic period focused on mobilizing Nordic agility, innovation, risk-taking, along transformative climate and development solutions for those who need it the most. So while we had the short intro, we also had the first poll running. Around 80% of those who joined already voted. So if you haven't done so, please cast your vote. I'm happy to see that the number of attendees is growing fast. So thank you so much for finding the time to join us today. I think we can end the first poll and share the results. So as you can see on the screen, around 50% of our attendees today, so half of the attendees already joined, joining us from Europe. We have another 27% joining from Africa. We have 12% each of attendees joining from Asia, Middle East, or from Americas. So thank you so much for joining and for casting your vote for the first poll. I think without further delay, we can move to the introduction. So allow me to introduce our speakers for today's event. So please welcome Satu Santala, Managing Director at NDF. So Satu has been the Managing Director at NDF since 2024. Before joining NDF, she served as Associate Vice President of the External Relations and Governments Department at the International Fund for Agricultural Development. She brings extensive expertise in international relations and development, having held a range of roles at the Finnish Ministry for Foreign Affairs in 1994. Satu has also served as Executive Director at the World Bank, representing the Nordic and Baltic countries. She holds a master's degree in political science from Abo Academy in Finland. Please also welcome Malena Rosman. Malena is the Director of the Portfolio Management Department at NDF. She has over 15 years of experience in international development cooperation, specializing in catalytic financing for development. Before joining NDF in 2024, she held senior roles at the Swedish Development Cooperation Agency, including Director for Corporate Management and Deputy Head of the Unit for Guarantees and Catalytic Financing. She has also served as a deputy head of the development department at the Swedish Embassy in Tanzania and worked with the UNDP in New York. Malena holds a master's degree in business administration and economics from the international program at Uppsala University in Sweden. So welcome Satu, welcome Malena. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. So before we move to the presentations, we have a short icebreaker question, which we'll address to Satu. So Satu, can you walk us through on how a typical day at NDF looks like?
Oh, thank you, Jan. And we don't really need an icebreaker anymore because even here in Finland, ice is gone for the winter and the spring is here. But yeah, so we are an international team all located here in Helsinki. And a typical day, or I don't think we have a typical day, but anyway, a work day is unfolding behind us, behind these curtains over here. We have an open office environment here with lots of collaboration happening between our great team every day. We often or typically every day there are several dialogues with different partners that we work with, many online meetings, as is the custom these days. We do of course travel as well, but we are a climate institution, so we travel with caution and use virtual meetings where that makes sense. We're also a very collaborative team, so you would any given time you would hear little conversations happening in the office, colleagues working on project or some other internal work. And then we are a Nordic workplace, so there's a very low hierarchy. We all kind of interact a lot, and we try to keep a good work-life balance, so you wouldn't see a lot of people hanging out in the office very late in the evenings. We rather take our relaxation also seriously and go home at some point in the afternoon. Yeah, maybe that's what I wanted to share at this point. But yeah, I think it's a really nice place to work and a really nice atmosphere here.
Thanks so much, Satu. And a follow-up question from me: are visitors allowed to visit the headquarters office?
Of course, we do receive visitors, but you have to agree a meeting with us before. But yes, we do receive visitors here too.
Okay, nice. Hopefully one day I'll be able to visit you in Helsinki.
Very welcome.
Thank you so much. So while Satu was kindly introducing us to a typical day at NDF, we had the second poll running, asking you how familiar are you with NDF and its projects. So around 67% of attendees already voted. So if you haven't done so, please do, because it'll be interesting to see how familiar are you with NDF and if you ever work together. Okay, so I think we can close this poll now and share the results. So very interesting results. As you can see, the vast majority of our attendees today, which will be about 80%, are either not familiar with NDF or aware of NDF, but not really familiar of specifics of your work. So they heard about you, but don't know too many details. We have 14% of attendees who are familiar with your concept of the organization, but also your projects, but no direct involvement. We have 3% each for people who are either involved directly or indirectly with you, or directly as a part of consortia, or just directly engaged you as a partner before. So it's very nice to see. Given that majority of our attendees today, they don't know too much about the organization, I think it's a good way for us to start as a high-level information and go into details if and when needed. So thanks so much again for participating in our polls. I think we are ready to move to the presentations. And I will give you the presenter rights, so you should be able to share a screen soon. Okay, I confirm that we can see the screen. Good luck, Satu and Malena. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jan, and really very warmly welcome on our behalf as well to everyone who joined. I'm really happy that you've decided to spend a little bit of your day with us today. And also really nice to see the poll results that that there's many of you who don't know either anything or very much about us, which of course gives a really good motivation for us to talk a little bit about us. And sorry for those of you who know us already well if we are repeating things that that you already know. But starting with the very DNA of NDF, what are we and what is our purpose? Really, the point about NDF is that we invest in the nexus between climate and development. So for us, both the planet and people are important. And that's how we also prioritize what we decide to finance. We are, as Ian already said in his introduction, a Nordic joint institution, and we are established by the governments of Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, and Sweden, who've also provided our capital. And our focus has already been on climate since 2009, and that's where we see our future as well. And we are all located here in Helsinki. Oh, the slides are no. Yes. Then the unique thing about NDF is that we provide catalytic financing, and that is enabled by both us being concessional financiers doing grants, but then also we have a broader set of financial instruments. So in addition to grants, we can also do what we call booster grants, these early stage grants for project development, or in not really project development, but I should say structuring different initiatives. And then we can also make equity investments and loans, and often also combinations of these instruments, which gives us a good opportunity to be flexible and to really drive that catalytic impact together with our partners. Partnerships is very important to NDF. We are a co-financier, so we ourselves are a relatively small team, and we always work together with strategic partners, meaning that we always need to have a lead partner who's leading on the work, and we co-finance. And we have what we call our 3 C's that really are the core of how we work. So first of all, we always want to complement with our actions what our partners are doing. So instead of trying to always find our own project or always kind of ring fencing what we do, we really look to complement what others are doing, and therefore are able to respond to the really great needs both for climate and development finance. We're also co-create, meaning we are a very active investor, in particular in the early stages of the investment cycle, not just joining in when everything is already figured out, but really engaging early, contributing with our expertise in the design of different initiatives, and also throughout the investment cycle, we remain engaged and an active investor. And then convening to us means that we really like to bring different partners together, and really through that enhance our global impact. Then to our strategy that has been approved and launched at the beginning of this year. At the background of our strategy is really very rapidly increasing financing needs, and the very fast-moving climate crisis that we see, and we think that that our contribution really needs to be very ambitious in terms of moving the frontier of climate and development finance, mobilize both financing, but then also innovation and this kind of Nordic way of working, agility and an ability to move fast, and also take risk. Through our concessional finance, we can take risks that more commercially based financiers cannot. And that we also really focus on the most urgent challenges and people most at risk. In our strategy, we have 4 strategic goals that support this ambition. The first one is around maximizing our added value through our risk-tolerant and concessional finance. And that really means taking that early risk and really trying to engage on initiatives that can move the needle. We are focused on working in the poorer countries, the lower income countries, and 60% of our financing should be committed to projects in sub-Saharan Africa. This is also currently the situation. We are doing this. Also, going forward, we really want to make sure that the majority of our new projects include these early stage catalytic approaches. And then we also obviously monitor the climate finance we mobilize. For us, mobilization is important, but we also think that sometimes we engage in more market creating initiatives. So it's not only about the number on mobilization, but also, of course, how we can create markets. Then adaptation and biodiversity are very much in focus. Adaptation is something that has been important for us all along, and so it will be in the future. And we really want to drive solutions here, both in our collaboration with the public sector and then also increasingly in our collaboration with the private sector. And going forward, 50% of our new commitments should be towards adaptation. Then we do continue to engage also on mitigation programs. And of course, we also are fully aware that the world is not perfectly split in half in terms of what is adaptation, what is mitigation projects. Often there are benefits to both areas. And we also do continue to engage on mitigation projects, but we want to be ambitious in the sense that we will engage where there is good potential for innovation and scale on the mitigation side. Then biodiversity and nature positive investments is a newer area for us, not entirely new, but this is the first time that in our strategy we are specifically setting a target on this. And this is an indication that the Nordic countries really take also the nature crisis seriously and would like us to seek opportunities to invest in climate projects that also have nature positive and biodiversity benefits. We have committed that during this strategy period, we do integrate considerations on nature and biodiversity into our projects and also our reporting practices and internal processes. And then the fourth important area for us is advancing Nordic climate leadership. For us, this means that because we are a Nordic organization owned by the 5 Nordic countries, we embed Nordic values and priorities in all of the projects we do. This means, for example, a very rigorous approach on gender equality. We don't engage in projects where gender equality is not properly integrated and taken into consideration, for example. And then we also actively build Nordic partnerships and collaboration opportunities between both public and private sectors in the Nordics. For example, we have started organizing a Nordic climate event to bring together different partners and work concretely on initiatives. And for example, we would like to work together with other Nordic investors to bring together some Nordic financing in specific projects going forward. So these are the 4 goals. This is our strategy in a nutshell. Then now I would like to pass the word to Malena, who will talk a little bit more about our work concretely and our operations. Go ahead.
Thank you, Satu. Sorry about that. Thank you, Satu, and good afternoon, good morning, everyone. It was quite an impressive spread of people coming from different parts of the world. Very happy to be here with you today. And now that Satu has framed how we work in relation to our new strategy, I'd like to give you some insights on what type of investments we make. And I will share some data and some examples from our portfolio. So what you will see are the investments and partnerships where we support turning climate ambition into practical results. And especially where finance doesn't reach on its own, that needs some support. Our role, as Satu has said, is usually to be catalytic. We have to de-risk investments, bring partners in, and keep a strong focus on impact so that we can see that successful solutions can be scaled. And what you see here now in this picture is a snapshot of where the portfolio sits right now. So you can get a sense of scale before we look into specific examples. So we currently have around 60 active projects in the portfolio, and they cover both public sector projects and a growing share of private sector investments. And in total, our active portfolio represents around 489 million euros. That's actually quite specific. So it is a meaningful footprint, but still one where we really need to be also selective and catalytic, where it really matters to use our funding wisely. Our focus, as Satu mentioned, is on low-income countries and in particular in sub-Saharan Africa. And this has resulted in 68% of our portfolio that is dedicated to projects in Africa. And although a substantial part of the portfolio supports climate mitigation, more than 50% of the portfolio is now focused on climate adaptation projects. But also, as alluded to, there is not always a clear-cut division between mitigation and adaptation. So many of them have a combination of both. So looking at some of the examples, this slide is about how NDF, with relatively small amounts, I would say, of concessional funding, can leverage much larger pools of climate finance through our investments in private sector funds that then invest in portfolios of companies. In so-called blended finance, we are often among the first movers, taking early risks, and by that proving a model and creating confidence for other investors to come in. And to date, our catalytic capital has helped mobilize $3.3 billion for private sector impact investments, and the portfolio, as mentioned, is growing. So we do feel that we are punching above our weight. This example, the Energy Entrepreneurs Growth Fund, shows what a blended finance investment can look like in practice. And here, providing finance to off-grid energy companies so that households and small businesses can access clean, safe, reliable, and affordable energy. In this case, we didn't just co-finance. We also helped to shape the fund's impact framework and strengthen its gender approach, which are priorities for us. And the outcomes of these investments in the portfolio are quite measurable and has so far resulted in millions of clean energy connections that led to improved access to electricity for close to 15 million people and thousands of jobs with strong participation by women. In this example, the West Africa Coastal Areas Program focuses on building resilience through a public sector project. thus helping communities and systems withstand climate and environmental shocks. The West Africa coastal region is heavily exposed to rising sea levels, coastal erosion and pollution, but it is also home to rich biodiversity and plays a crucial role in climate mitigation and adaptation. For instance, with carbon capturing mangroves and nature-based solutions that then can reduce the risk of natural hazards. What is really powerful here in this example is the focus on nature-based approaches, working with existing ecosystems rather than against them. And this program stretches over 9 countries and has helped mobilize around 500 million euros in climate finance. So it's not just one project, it's actually a regional platform. And at community level, that translates into fewer people exposed to erosion and hundreds of hectares managed more sustainably. And by that, reducing risks of losing livelihoods and creating insecurity. So moving into the next example, as Satu mentioned earlier, how we seek to engage with partners through the 3 Cs. To complement, to co-create and convene. So in general, we don't work alone. We invest alongside others. And our approach is to combine financing with expertise through long-term strategic partnerships, because we think that is the most efficient way. In climate and development, we know that the challenges are too interconnected for single actors to move alone. So the goal is to align incentives and move together. In this case, the Systematic Observations Financing Facility tackles something that may seem basic, but is absolutely critical. Many countries still lack reliable weather and climate observations. And without good data, early warning systems and climate planning are weak. So improving observations is really foundational for resilience. SOF, as it's called in short, already supports more than 60 countries, particularly least developed countries and small island developing states, places where we know the capacity gaps are often biggest. And NDF helped to get SOF off the ground as an anchor donor, which made it easier for others to then join in, having more confidence. And now the total pledges are around $150 million US. This is also a strong Nordic collaboration model where meteorological institutes in the Nordics are acting as peer advisors, and by that sharing practical know-how across continents. So the fourth and last example, beyond financing projects and funds, NDF also acts as a fund manager for the Energy and Environment Partnership for Africa Trust Fund. EP Africa, in short, backs early-stage innovative clean energy projects and business models in Southern and Eastern Africa. And especially at the stage where the ideas may be promising, but the capital is hardest to access. EP Africa does not only provide grants and catalytic funding, there is also a module of technical support, providing investment facilitation and knowledge sharing among grantees. And this program is funded by a group of like-minded partners, Nordics, plus Austria and Switzerland in this case. So it's really a shared effort. The company showcased here, Millennium Engineers, is one of the EEP Africa grantees. This is a woman-owned solar startup supporting livelihoods in Lake Victoria's fishing value chain. By solar drying facilities and floating solar lamps, they can replace kerosene and kerosene lamps and also improve the productivity. And by thus then having a positive impact not only on climate and health, but also on incomes. And if we look at the investment size in this case, which is around 350,000 euros, it shows that a relatively modest amount of catalytic funding can really unlock substantial local impact in this case. So to summarize and conclude, what we as NDF see as the key contributions that we can provide. We, as mentioned, we bring Nordic experience and values into climate and development work, plus also strong partnerships that can help us move credibly and consistently. And secondly, we can operate across public and private sector investments with flexible instruments. So we are able to fit the financing to the problem and not the other way around. And third, we focus on being catalytic. I think we have said that several times now, but it's really something that where we can really see that we can add a lot of value. And by that, testing solutions, de-risking early stages, and also mobilize additional capital rather than acting alone. And fourth, our work sits, as mentioned, right at the intersection of climate and development, but now also with a sharpened focus on biodiversity, because we know that climate outcomes and nature outcomes are tightly linked. So to conclude, I would say at NDF, we aim to make climate finance work better where it's hardest to deliver by being early, flexible, and impact-driven. And by that, I just want to say thank you for listening and looking forward to the upcoming discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Malena and Satu. So we have a number of questions already came in. But I encourage our attendees, if you have any questions, please send them. We'll start our Q&A session right now. The first question that we noticed is about the PowerPoint slides. I think we can share them, right?
Of course.
Yeah, so you can reach out directly to me or to the DevelopmentAid department, marketing department, and we'll be happy to share them with you. Okay, so the first question is from Elena. So Elena asks, you speak about key partners, but I'm not sure if you actually mentioned which are your key partners. So maybe it'll be nice to know that.
Thank you for that. Sorry about the echo. Thank you for that question. No, and if we look at the different sort of paths that we groups of partners that we work with. So in the public sector space, we choose to work very much with the multilateral development banks, meaning the World Bank or the World Bank Group, and also the African Development Bank, as well as the Asian Development Bank and the Inter-American Development Bank. Also, in some cases with the UN system, like SOF, for example, it's a multi-partner trust fund that sits within the UN system. And of course, in these cases, these are very big partners, but we have seen that we can, in many cases, come in and add value in specific on specific issues that we prioritize. It maybe in the past used to be more on making sure that there was a climate climate thinking in all investments that were made, but now maybe it might be more about strengthening gender aspects or locally led climate adaptation or other things that we have prioritized. So in the public sector space, we work very much with the big MDBs and the UN system. In the private sector space, we do not do direct investments into single companies, but we invest in private sector funds that have a portfolio of companies. And that means that we actually provide funding to a fund manager that has been selected to manage the fund. So in the private sector space, we work with a diversity of different actors. We have in some cases, we may have two investments with the same fund manager, but very often it's a diversity. So we also put a lot of effort into sort of assessing new partners and making sure that we are aligned on priorities and also on standards on environment and social standards and gender issues and other things that we look at when we assess a new investment. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, it does actually. But as a follow-up questions, I'm wondering, do you have like a business development team who initiates these discussions with MDBs and private sector, or is there like a two-way channel communication? How does it work?
Well, also very good question. It works differently, I would say. I think with the MDBs, we have established partnerships. And by that, we have sort of an ongoing discussion. And like now, when we have a new strategy, we try to make sure that they are aware of this is what we are prioritizing and this is what we're looking for. So if you have something that could be of interest to work on together, that they reach out to us. So I think that those relationships or partnerships are more established. In the private sector space, I think we are by now quite well known as an actor. So it's a combination of partners reaching out to us, proposing investment opportunities, and us reaching out in maybe bigger events where you have a group of fund managers getting together where you can have dialogues with a number of potential partners. But most recently, we also engaged in a collaboration. It's a mainly Nordic collaboration called IMCA, which is Investment Mobilization Coalition that tries to jointly invest in funds in the climate space. And within IMCA, we made a call for proposals. So we put on the table, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for funds that will invest in climate adaptation projects in sub-Saharan Africa. And then we received a large number of applications. And by that, we could then make a selection of which ones to move forward with.
Thanks so much, Malena. Satu, would you like to add anything to this, or should we move to the next question?
No, that was a perfect answer.
Perfect, thank you. So a follow-up question from Elena. So Elena is asking, is there a way for potential partners or companies interested to work with you to look for opportunities or find this expression of interest or available tenders somewhere? Is there a source they should visit, or how does it work?
Sure. Well, if you're a single company that is looking for investments, I think the most reasonable way would be to go through maybe one of the funds where we are invested. The only sort of direct relationship we have with companies is through the EEP Africa platform. And in that case, they provide early stage financing. So it has to be companies that are at a very early stage in their business cycle, or business life cycle. And in that case, they should look for the call for proposals that are announced. And very often, well, once per year, normally, we have a call for proposal for EEP Africa. So if you're in that space, I think the best is to look into their website and keep track on those call for proposals.
Thanks so much, Malena. Thanks so much, Malena. I think this also answers Anne's questions. She also asked how does NDF allocate funding, but I think you already answered that. So we can move to the next question, also from Anne, if you don't mind. So Anne is asking if the NDF have experienced or noticed a drop in financing when it comes to climate change adaptation initiatives.
Was it if we've seen a drop in financing?
Yeah, global scale.
Yeah. So of course we read the news, and we have of course seen that there have been very significant budget cuts in different parts of the world. Where, I mean, our financing remains stable, and the Nordic countries are committed at this point. So we don't have an issue ourselves. But then we haven't really seen in connection to our operations that we would have seen a significant drop. We do see that work continues. So it's I think a little bit early days, but of course what we have observed is that there is I think there's an increasing amount of organizations that also reach out to us. So I think that's an indication that probably financing sources may have dropped or dried up entirely for many organizations. So from that way, we do observe this. So it's more like indirect observations for us that we are seeing. Of course, we do think that it is very, very important that there is sufficient financing available, and that's also why we really want to make sure that we use the resources we have very carefully to where we can make the biggest difference, and that we also find ways of working where we can mobilize additional financing, including from the private sector, to this space.
Thank you, Satu. Thank you so much. We have a question from Marwan. Yeah, it focused mostly on your geographical area of operations. So you highlighted in your presentation that majority of operations are focused on sub-Saharan Africa, but Marwan is asking if you already have any projects or plan to have projects on North Africa as well.
Yeah, that's a really good question. We haven't had North Africa as a focus area for us. It's, I don't remember by heart, it's possible that in some of the private sector funds that have more of a global reach, that region would also be covered. Maybe Malena has more specific information, but that's the only way we would engage in that region for the time being. We are also a relatively small player, so we want to make sure that we are focused, and the governments who own us really would like us to focus mainly on sub-Saharan Africa, but then with also other regions to the extent it makes sense. Do you want to add, Malena?
Well, I think you said it rightly that.
I think you muted, Malena. Can you hear me, Malena? You are muted. We cannot hear you. Hello, can you hear me? Malena, can you hear me? You were in mute, so we were not able to hear you until now. So.
Sorry, we say not to create an echo. We would have just one end, and then both turned out.
And I see that both of your microphones are now.
I think Satu covered it. In the portfolios that are managed by some of the funds that we invest, there are investments in Northern Africa as well, because if they have a regional or global outreach, very often the private sector want to diversify risk and have a combination of different income status of countries. But we focus mainly on low-income countries and least developed countries. So we would not allow that we would be too many investments in middle-income or high-income countries that are ODA eligible. Sorry, we only invest in ODA eligible countries.
Okay, thank you. We have a question here from Victor. I'm just trying to see if I understand the question. So Victor is asking, from your perspective, what distinguishes a climate adaptation proposal that is technically sound from one that is truly catalytic and scalable across vulnerable regions? Is there supposed to be a difference? I think a technical sound proposal already implies that it is scalable in a sense, but maybe I don't understand the question correctly. What do you think?
Maybe I start and then I'll pass it on to Malena. Yeah, of course, these are always difficult definitions where we look at catalytic from a few perspectives. One is that early engagement. So we engage early when we can also be part of co-creating and really shaping an initiative, and thereby bringing that kind of making a difference in that collaboration. Then we also look at it from the financing perspective. So, for example, in the private sector space, it's quite clear that because our financing is concessional. So, for example, in the blended fund, we would go in with junior capital that then de-risks some of the private capital to come in. So, with our participation, we catalyze and we make it possible for the initiative to be financed by also more private capital. So that's one way of looking at what catalytic means for us. And then, you know, because we are a smaller financier, so we are not the appropriate vehicle for doing, you know, things that are already well proven, can be taken on by some of the larger financiers, or maybe governments themselves. Then we're not really needed. So we're more there to kind of push things forward, be part of taking risk in an early idea or an early design. Anything to add, Malena?
You have this one?
I can keep mine. Oh.
No, I think you covered it. I think maybe to say about scaling, of course, we would like to also try to create demonstration effects to maybe create confidence in a type of investments, in a type of structure, so that it can be replicated and scaled up. So because of we are impact driven, but we also believe that larger scale delivers more impact. So we're not afraid of supporting scale, but since we come in early, they might not be at that stage when we come in, but we do assess whether this is a scalable solution.
Thank you, Satu and Malena. And just a follow-up question from myself. So when you decide on which areas to focus, do you use some kind of like do you do some kind of research, or you have like a research team, or how do you decide which area needs more attention from NDF?
You know?
Do you want to do that?
I can start. My goodness, we are technically not very savvy here. Yeah, so first of all, we have the strategy to guide us in terms of, you know, what are the broader areas that we need to be focusing on. And then we have also, we have more experience in some areas, and that kind of gives us also a bit more confidence. We don't have a research team separately or anything of that sort. We do have, of course, a very able team who constantly are looking at what's happening in this space, are in a lot of dialogues with different partners, and so on. So that's also where we do get some of our information, and then. Yeah, we also are very much focusing on learning from projects that we have financed, and where we see that there is good potential for something new. So it's a combination of mainly internal work by our colleagues, dialogues with partners, and also learning from for example, research that others are undertaking.
Thank you so much. Next question comes from Bradford. So Bradford is asking if you have any sort of leverage ratios you aim at focusing or aiming when compared from amounts of that you direct for lending and grants, and also is there a minimum or max amount that you direct for each project?
Sure. We don't have any specified targets for leverage ratios or mobilization, but we do monitor it. And that's also has to do that we are impact driven firsthand. So we don't want to be chasing mobilization targets. But of course, in every private sector investment we make, we have to make an assessment, since we provide concessional funding, to what extent is it needed and to what level should we provide concessional funding, so we don't over subsidize. So in that sense, we try to keep the concessional funding as low as possible, of course, and by that having as good as leverage as possible with the private sector funding, but it's not something that we strictly follow in that sense. There was something else.
The minimum maximum.
Yes, minimum maximum. Yes. Well, we have normally we provide to a single fund or project, we provide financing at the scale between 5 and 15 million euros. So that, and we annually, like you also mentioned initially, we invest around 70 to 80 million euros per year. So that is sort of a manageable also amount of new projects that we can take on. So yeah, between 5 and 15, which is quite, but on average around 10-ish million euros.
Thank you so much, Malena. Okay, so we have a number of questions still coming in, so we will not be able to cover most of those, but we thank you so much for sending those. You can reach out to me directly and I'll try to direct them to Malena or Satu after that. So we'll cover 2 more questions. In between these questions, we will have our 3rd and last poll running, so feel free to cast your vote. So the next question comes from Stefano, and I think it's a very interesting question. So Stefano is asking if NDF provides any capacity building training related to climate change and mitigation adaptation to its partners.
We don't ourselves provide training, but we have, in most cases, when we make an investment, we do provide, both in the public and private sector, we provide also technical assistance facilities, which are then grant funded, which can then build capacity with the partner or with the beneficiaries, depending on where the needs are. So we provide financing for capacity building, but so indirectly, yes, but not, of course, not directly, because we're a small organization and we are financier.
Thank you. And a follow-up question: do you conduct any evaluation programs related to your projects and scalability of those projects?
Yes, we do. We do that. So basically, all of the projects where we've invested in do include an evaluation program. They may differ depending on the type of program they are, but that's always there. And we do, of course, engage on those evaluations and also learn from those ourselves and capture them. We've also done a few times every few years. We've also conducted or commissioned an evaluation on NDF itself to also learn and develop ourselves as an organization and think about where we need to be going. So, for example, before the new strategy that we developed last year, we had conducted an evaluation of NDF itself.
And this evaluations are usually done by external companies, right?
Exactly, an external independent evaluation, yes.
Okay, thank you. So we have another question from Peter. So Peter is asking, what are the cycles for the calls of proposals or EOI? And do you also accept unsolicited proposals?
Yes, so we don't do call for proposals on a regular basis. As I mentioned, we're part of this IMCA collaboration together with the other Nordic countries, and recently we made a call for proposal, but that was kind of an unusual way of working for us when it comes to our regular sort of project portfolio. But then we do have within the EEP Africa Trust Fund that we manage, within that trust fund, we do run basically once a year a call for proposal for new possible grantees. But other than that, we do, yes, we do get proposals directly to us, but we also try to proactively reach out in forums or with partners where we can see that there are opportunities for us.
Thank you so much. So I think the last question will be, so I see that here we have some questions, for example, that from individual consultants. One is from Sergio, which asks if you hold a database of CVs, or if individual experts can reach out for opportunities working with NDF.
Thank you for that question. We do sometimes engage consultants, but that's relatively rare just because of the way we finance. We normally go with a lead partner who would then be doing procuring for consultancies whenever necessary. So we don't therefore keep a database of consultants because we quite rarely would be using them, and it would be mainly for some institutional needs that we have, and that those would be quite limited. So yeah, we don't really do much of that, but of course, you know, yeah, sometimes we would be needing consultants, but yeah, I don't maybe want to encourage people to spend a lot of time by reaching out to us because the opportunities are not going to be very many. But of course, if you after listening to us realize that this is something that really I would like to engage on, of course, happy to receive.
Yeah, and also a kind reminder that you can also follow NDF's profile on DevelopmentAid. We also try to keep an eye on calls or proposals or any other opportunities, so you can keep an eye on that also. I think the last question is also good questions from Vivian. This will be our last question. So Vivian is asking, does NDF differentiate its financing approach between countries in conflict or fragile states and of course more stable countries, but considered low income?
That's of course a very, very good question. Because of the way we are organized, we rarely engage in extremely challenging situations, so direct conflict situations or such. And a lot of our investments are regional in nature. So then, of course, there are sometimes countries that are fragile or a post-conflict or so on in those approaches. So we do mainly because we work with partners, so we do want to make sure that the partner we're working on has a solid approach for working in fragile situations if those countries are part of a program. So that's the kind of the main focus we have. And that means, for example, appropriate assessments and the kind of operational flexibility that is required and so on. So that's the way we look at it, sort of one step removed from the actual engagement.
Thank you so much. I think we can close the Q&A session for today. Apologies for the attendees who were not able, who didn't receive the answers for the questions. We still have a lot of questions in the question box, so feel free to reach out. I also noticed that we have questions about the slides. You can reach out to me directly, and I'll be happy to share those with you. So before we wrap up today's session, I would like to thank Satu and Malena for providing us with a very interesting presentation and in-depth overview of how NDF leverages Nordic agility, innovation, and risk-taking to unlock transformative climate and development solutions for the most vulnerable areas and communities around the world. I encourage you to keep an eye on our future events. We have a very interesting event in the pipeline. So I wish you a nice day ahead, and we look forward to welcome you again next time.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Oh, you're still there.
I still have it open with Jan.
Oh, okay.
Bye-bye, Satu. Bye-bye, Malena.
Okay, thanks a
Bye-bye.
lot. Thanks,
Bye.
thanks very much. Bye-bye.